Good evening. It is time for today's tax talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Crypto Tuesday, August 30th, the year of our Lord 2022. And there's an alphabet war going on with the government. Who's going to regulate the crypto world? It means a lot of money to either one of them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? So, as I mentioned, there's an alphabet war. It's the SEC versus the CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Committee, against the Securities and Exchange Commission, I should say. And that's what's going on, right? Who's going to regulate? Who's going to have control? Because remember, having control over regulation is going to be money. They got to be funded, because this is a new area, something that was beyond their so they need more money, obviously. And so that's, right now, the SEC, I think, has 6 times the budget of the CFTC. And so, but it looks like that the commodities futures exchange is going to win, at least because they have some powerful allies. And so let's start with the story. But as we start every Crypto Tuesday, we're going to start with the market. It's been pretty hectic over this last week. We've seen a lot going on that because it had broken the 2,000 or 20,000 mark. Bitcoin did after last week approaching 25 over the 24, and then it went back down to 20. So there was a lot of news on there. You see that it's below 20 right now at 1988.41. And then Ethereum is also down for the day. So here's the last 7 days. It's a downward trend. Not a good thing. Let's look at Ethereum for the last 7 days. Kind of mirrors each other, as I say, most weeks. Most weeks they kind of mirror each other. So that's where they are. So thank you, CoinFlip.tech. CoinFlip.tech. We always go there for the latest in the markets. So here's where we're going to go. The CFTC and the SEC perspectives on cryptocurrency and digital assets. Now, this is where we are. Now, the government never really called it cryptocurrency. They always referred to it as virtual currency. But now, as evidenced by the new 1040 for next year, the government is moving into digital assets. And they're referring to them all as digital assets and not virtual currency. That's what you'll find on the IRS form, 1040 form. And also that they're coming out with the 1099-DA, the 1099 digital assets to track or report the information returns that they're going to use to report digital assets, because it's more than cryptocurrency. It's more than virtual currency. As it gets larger, they're trying to make sure that they cover all of their bases. So I just want to read the first introduction and then the conclusion, because there's a lot of information here that you probably wouldn't be interested in, or maybe I don't have time to read it, which is probably both true. The rise of cryptocurrencies and digital assets in the financial markets, including the investment management industry, has given rise to a crucial question: which federal regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, will be primarily responsible to regulate the use of crypto and crypto-related activities. SEC Chair Gary Gensler has stated that crypto products are subject to the securities laws and must work within our securities regime, while the CFTC Commissioner Quintez expressed that the SEC has no authority over pure commodities or their trading venues, whether those commodities are wheat, gold, oil, or crypto assets. In this article, we provide a high-level overview of SEC's and CFTC's current jurisdiction over and treatment of crypto, and discuss recent enforcement actions involving crypto and the potential significance thereof to other markets participants. So then they talk about what the SEC jurisdiction is, what the CFTC's jurisdiction is. They have some case law, some cases that are pending, that both are bringing against companies. They have a little matrix here about what, who should regulate, and then the conclusion. Unlike the earliest days of Bitcoin trading, cryptocurrencies and digital assets have now caught the eye of federal regulators, something we've been talking a lot about on this show for months and months. We're pointing this out in that this is the battle. Who's gonna control the regulatory regime here? And again, a lot of funds go with that. They just gave the IRS another $80 billion, right, on top of the $14 billion a year they already get. So there's money to be made. There's money to be had. And the bigger, if I'm running an agency, I want more funding. I want more people. I want my agency to be the superior. Both the CFTC and SEC are asserting their jurisdiction in this space, and in many cases, additional clarity is needed to understand whether a digital asset should be considered a commodity, subject to the CFTC's enforcement authority, or a security, subject to the SEC's jurisdiction. In addition, even with this clarity, a related question persists on whether the SEC or CFTC collectively have sufficient regulatory authority in order to properly regulate crypto markets, or if congressional action is needed. We always know that Congress wants to act. They want to act. We always say that Congress doesn't act enough. I think they act too much, but that's just me. As crypto regulation evolves, market participants will have much greater certainty, and in all likelihood, a new regulatory regime involving both the SEC and the CFTC, as the SEC and the CFTC continue to enforce their jurisdiction over the digital asset market. We will continue to keep you apprised of all noteworthy enforcement actions and regulatory updates. And I don't think one's going to give up to the other. But this is about the Senate coming up with a regime. U.S. looks to provide customer protections to crypto investors in this new bill. The Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act of 2022 is another legislation for regulating cryptocurrencies and digital assets in the United States. A group of U.S. senators have introduced a bill recently titled Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act of 2022, which gives teeth to the Commodities Future Trading Commission to regulate trading of digital commodities. The framework can be looked at as a safeguard for U.S. customers who are currently exposed to markets which are not regulated. You can read the entire draft of the bill here. You mean people are doing things without the government's regulatory enforcement? Oh my. I understand. I understand that some of the stuff they say is needed, but these rules hold to digital commodities platforms to the same standards as traditional financial institutions. Read a document summarizing the draft of the bill. Here's that document. Not that document. Here's that document. Here's the summary. I just want to point out there in Section 3, let's read this. It grants the Commodities Future Trading Commission exclusive jurisdiction over digital commodity trades, except for transactions in which a merchant or consumer is using a digital commodity solely for the purchase or sale of goods and services, prohibits fraud with respect to any digital commodity trade. Okay, so this looks like they're saying, hey, it's going to be, according to these senators who are pushing this bill, it hasn't passed, but this was introduced, I think, more than 30 days ago. Let's see what the date is of this. I think this was August 8th, so not quite 30 days ago. The bill would allow the CFTC to regulate two of the most popular cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and other crypto assets which are not classified as securities by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The bill was backed by the following senators: 1 in 5 Americans have used or traded digital assets, but these markets lack the transparency and accountability that they expect from our financial system. Too often, this puts Americans' hard-earned money at risk. Never miss out on important developments in tech. Okay, so why is it important? The bill is notable because it will provide clear governmental oversight to digital asset commodity markets. The crypto markets have been facing a series of hacks of late, leaving investors in a bind who wish to seek recourse. It is also important to note that many countries, including India around the world, are looking to regulate digital assets. The cross-border nature of these assets make it all the more pertinent for countries to join hands in order to bring effective regulation. Definition. The bill defines digital commodity as a fungible digital form of personal property that can be possessed and transferred person to person without necessary reliance on an intermediary. The draft also lists the following exclusions to the definition: an interest in a physical commodity, a security. So they are leaving it open for the SEC because the SEC defines security, and they are saying many of these products offered by some of the crypto exchanges are in fact securities, and so therefore subject to their regulation. A digital form of currency backed by the U.S. Any other instrument not classified as digital commodity by the CFTC. Which, how long do you think that list will be? Not very long. The draft, however, steers clear of defining which tokens constitute a commodity or a security. One of the key provisions of the bill grants the CFTC exclusive jurisdiction over digital commodity trades. The CFTC will be tasked with prohibiting fraud with respect to any digital commodity trade. It means that every trade will now come under the preview of the CFTC except for transactions in which a merchant or consumer is using a digital commodity solely for the purchase of sale of goods or services. The CFTC also has the power to inspect and monitor digital commodity platforms in real time for purpose of ensuring compliance with the Act. I'm not going to go into all this, but they go through this. I have this article linked below. Now, this is Gary Gensler's. He is the SEC chair. And so this, what does this say? Gross SEC overreach. The Supreme Court, let's get rid of this. The Supreme Court may have, now it's going to go on. I don't want it to go on. The Supreme Court may have recently struck down overreach by the Environmental Protection Agency, but the Securities and Exchange Commission chairman remains undeterred in expanding the agency's power. The agency beyond its constitutional boundaries. Well, how can they do that? For proof, you need no better example than his all-out assault on cryptocurrency space. It doesn't take a constitutional law expert to understand that the SEC has limited jurisdiction over the crypto industry. Barring congressional action, frontline regulation of digital assets belongs to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the main regulator of investments that are not deemed traditional securities. Yet, Gensler, President Biden's pick to run the agency intended to focus on stock scammers ripping off the unsuspecting, has dived headfirst into crypto like Elliot Ness going after Al Capone. If successful, almost 80 years of U.S. securities laws will be upended within Gensler's first 2 years as chair. The Securities Act of 1933 lists the types of securities regulated by the SEC, including investment contracts. In 1946, the Supreme Court decided a landmark Howey Test, providing a 4-part test determining which constitutes an investment contract. 76 years later, Gensler seeks to turn the test on its head with promises to regulate digital assets in more intrusive manner than even his trigger-happy predecessor did. Howey involved the offer of sale of an orange groves at the Florida resort owned and operated by Howey Company, where hotel guests invested in harvesting oranges. The company pitched its guests that it would be all necessary work involving in growing and selling oranges. Aside from signing the land purchase and service contracts, the investors did nothing except collect money. The Supreme Court found that this business scheme constituted an investment contract and set out the so-called Howey Test, establishing a standard for decades. According to the Howey Test, an investment contract occurs when a person invests money in a common enterprise and is led to expect profits solely from the efforts of the promoter or third party. All 4 prongs must be met. Since Howey, Congress has failed to pass any new legislation that would directly involve regulation of crypto. This should mean that the Congress's intent that crypto's de facto regulator is the CFTC, which has chosen a lighter touch because it fears stifling an emerging technology that blockchain and their digital assets represent. Yet Gensler has used this perceived lack of clarity to unleash a campaign of regulation by enforcement, stretching Howey beyond recognition. When Gensler looks at crypto, he not only sees an opportunity to regulate how the land and service contracts were sold, but an opportunity to regulate the oranges. As a legal theory, it should frighten everyone well beyond into the crypto space. The SEC has two key pending cases. First, the Ripple case launched by Jay Clayton on his last day as chairman of the SEC, but being advanced by Gensler. It involves the digital asset XRP. Clayton, possibly fearing Gensler would take credit for what he viewed as an easy agency enforcement victory, brought charges against Ripple executives for selling XRP in a way that classified it as a security under Howey because the proceeds, the SEC alleged, were used in part to help expand Ripple's business. Thus, they should have disclosed information to investors on those sales as if they were a public company. Okay, I don't want to read all of this because you won't stick around for it all. But let's see if we can. Either way, Gensler's war against crypto might be as his most ambitious and dangerous affront to constitutional norms. Every single case since Howey found that the security involved in an actual contract of some level of privity between the buyer and seller. Absent congressional action, Gensler intends to turn nearly a century of legal precedent on its head with his enforcement bulldozer. Here's a story about that. This is a fairly short story. We should be able to get to it fairly quickly. The Securities and Exchange Commission came under unfavorable scrutiny this Thursday when a representative appeared on CoinDesk's First Mover show expressing concern about the SEC's overreach. Although representative is a lawyer by profession, he is chairing Congressional Blockchain Caucus as well as co-chairing Congressional Broadcasters Caucus. The function of these voluntary groups is to pursue common objectives in a more effective manner. Emmer's interest in SEC's behavior is further spurred by serving on the House Committee for Financial Services. Addressing Pandora's box when OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash, an open source protocol that ensures financial privacy, Emmer pointed out that the SEC is transforming its regulatory mission into a shakedown authority. Specifically, the SEC is abusing its subpoena power to intimidate crypto firms, even those that shouldn't be under its agency's oversight. Due to the lack of legislative framework, the SEC, led by Gensler, has gained a reputation for filling the legislative void by dictate. Even more so, its deceitful push to invite blockchain firms for a talk only to later hit them with sanctions that are not applied universally. Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, described this behavior as really sketchy last September when the SEC designated Coinbase lending program as security. Armstrong described the situation as the SEC engaging in intimidation tactics behind closed doors, while simultaneously refusing to provide written guidelines. In July, Emmer confirmed that he probed the SEC Director of Enforcement to the point of admission that the agency is stepping outside his purview. During Coinbase's appearance, Emmer implied that his behavior is likely to continue until proper crypto legislation goes through. Unfortunately, for those seeking clear rules, this is not likely to happen this year with only 27 legislative days left. Here's the turf war. As with all bureaucrats, the more oversight they have, the larger their budgets. And if there is a legislative void, bureaucrats tend to fill it with rules of their own. In organizational theory, this is a well-explored theme. Schultz from the University of Washington noted this phenomenon in his study, Limits of Bureaucratic Growth. Organizations create rules when they encounter new problems that do not seem to be covered by existing rules, and when these problems are fairly recurrent, consequential, and salient. Another problematic layer occurs when they interpret non-problems as problems. In the case of the SEC, this appears to stem from the intergovernmental turf wars. Case in point, if the SEC was to interpret all cryptocurrencies except Bitcoin as securities, it would gain sway over the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is in charge of regulating commodities. The latest bill in the opposite direction, dubbed the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act of 2022, would put the CFTC at the front and center by registering brokers, custodians, and exchanges with the CFTC. There would no longer be a state-by-state ambiguity. Moreover, the bill would define other cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum as commodities, depending on their state of decentralization. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. I thought these were interesting. I think it's always interesting to see the government fight amongst themselves over who's going to regulate. We know there's going to be regulation. My own opinion is better that the Commodity Futures Trading Commission takes over, since they have a lighter touch and they're more concerned with the growth, as I think we all should be, rather than the SEC, which is, again, when a alphabet federal government agency comes calling, you answer. You can't say, hey, you don't have the authority to do this, because they have the power to do things that you think, even if they don't. It's just a scary thing. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time. I thought it's an interesting fight. So we'll follow that fight going forward. Remember, we're going to ask you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We need your help to get this information out. So please help us. Like or subscribe. And remember, if you have IRS problems, if you have unfiled tax returns, and you don't know what to do, the first thing you should do, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com, get your free copy. I will ask for a small fee for shipping and handling, but other than that, the book is free. All the bonuses are free also. So please go to freeirsbook.com. We'll see you again here tomorrow, where we'll talk about the tax issues and what's going on. And we thank you so much for joining us. See you tomorrow.